The Texans are set to make some big moves this offseason regarding the offensive line in order to go get a wide receiver. Nick Caserio has some big decisions to make for this team because they don't have any money this offseason, but that can change with a few trades. Welcome to Texans Digest. If you're new here, hit that sub button. We're dropping the latest Texans news all season long as we're in the prime offseason, just getting knocked out of the playoffs, but let's jump right into it. The Texans need to trade Laremy Tunsil. I know he's been great for the team, but he's on the last 2 years of his contract. He got paid a lot of money, and if we go back to the graphic I just showed, he has $28 million in cap hit. That is not good. If you trade him right now, you'll get $21 million back. And right now, the Texans have around $5-6 million in cap space. And if you were trying to make some moves to go get a wide receiver like T. Higgins or trade for a guy like Garrett Wilson or George Pickens, you need a wide receiver to pair with Nico Collins because Stephon Diggs is going to be 32 next year. He's not going to be on the contract. You're going to void his contract, and it's going to be a lot of tough spots to be in because the offensive line was bad last year. And if you look at what Tunsil has done, he may have only allowed 2 sacks, but the 17 penalties does not help. He will be 31 by the start of next year, and he's going to ask for another huge contract extension. You have to try your luck with the rookie Blake Fisher, who was out on an island on right tackle for some of the season because we had so many injuries. Titus Howard moved inside. I don't even mind trading Howard and Tunsil because that's so much money on the contracts. If you look at it right now, Tunsil, Howard, top 3. Danielle Hunter got a huge contract extension last offseason. That's fine. But you can't have 3-4 guys in the $20 million range when you don't have anything to work with. You got Nico Collins, and then you have nobody. So this is not good. But the whole reason I would honestly move on from Tunsil is mainly the fact of the penalties. The penalties were ridiculous this season. 19 of them. He had 9 through the first 3 weeks of the season, and I understand he's a great tackle. He is a great tackle. He's been an all-pro for a while. He's been one of the highest paid tackles, but there is still interest in him going elsewhere. The 19 penalties is not good. He jumps snaps. He holds when he has to. Yes, he has a good grade, but if you could trade him for the right price, I wouldn't mind it. The other option is restructuring his contract, and that's what you kind of have to do because Tunsil, being one of the highest paid tackles in the league, he got a 3-year, $75 million contract with $50+ million guaranteed. 60 in total. But it's just a lot of ridiculous things that you signed him in 2023 before that season starts. So you're coming up on 2 years since you signed Laremy Tunsil, and it was a good signing. It was just so much money at the time, and when you're paying $20 million for a top-tier tackle to have 19 penalties, the most by any player all season on the offensive line, that is not good. So for as bad as the offensive line was, Laremy Tunsil only let up 2 sacks, yes. But the entire offensive line second most in sacks. And a lot of that has to do with the injuries. But I'm not 100%, all right, get rid of him. I am totally fine with restructuring his contract because he's done it in the past. And I'll show this graphic because 21 sacks over 9 seasons, we understand that. But the amount of penalties he has does not show for what of a dominant tackle that he is. Because yes, he is a dominant player, but the penalties, they weigh him down. And I don't know how Texans fans feel, but I really do think this could be a good trade to get some money really quick. And honestly, just drop everything. Get rid of the whole offensive line. The only player I would consider keeping is Drew Scruggs, Blake Fisher because he's young, and Titus Howard. Howard can be a good inside guy. I love when you can have a guy go inside, outside. Howard can play the whole line, probably center if he tried, but he's also on a big contract. You have two tackles, a tackle and a guard, making $20 million and $28 million. That is not good. Titus Howard's making more money than Nico Collins. So it's a tough situation to be in because I am all in on, hey, let's get rid of Laremy Tunsil. Let's get rid of Titus Howard. Void Stephon Diggs' contract. Cut Shaq Mason because this offensive line was so bad last year when you were paying most of the guys on your team so much money. This was supposed to be a decent offensive line, and Stroud gets sacked 8 times in the playoffs versus the Chiefs. That can't happen. You need to give him time to get the ball out. And when you have an offensive coordinator who draws up these long processing plays, that's fine, but you need to bring time. So, first round, you either draft the receiver and keep your whole offensive line that was bad, second most in sacks last year, or you can get rid of the entire offensive line. Not the entire, but you can get rid of Laremy Tunsil. You can get rid of Shaq Mason. Definitely get rid of Shaq Mason before Laremy Tunsil. I would get rid of Shaq Mason. You either cut him for $9 million saving, or you trade him for $10 million. I don't know who is going to trade for Shaq Mason, but he's an old veteran. He was banged up most of the season. Get rid of him. And then Laremy Tunsil, I love him, but 30, 31, 32, he's getting up in age. He has $20 million a year. He's going to have some value. So honestly, you could probably, and this is where I'll go back to the trade rumor with the Chiefs. The Chiefs were interested in going out and getting Tunsil a few years back before we extended him. And honestly, it wasn't a bad idea to extend Tunsil. I don't mind it at all for the time being. But the older he gets, the more potential that you waste in terms of investing money into an offensive line that might be outside of its prime. That's what I'm kind of getting to here. Laremy Tunsil, how many years does he have left? Because do you wait the next 2 years and then do you extend him? Like, this is where he's going to be 34 by this end of his contract extension in 2026. So that's another thing to consider. Do you just get out now while the contract is still decent? Trade him. I think the Chiefs would take him because that's a penalty machine right there where you just grab him inside. He has so many holds, so many false starts, but I really do think if you get a first-round pick for Laremy Tunsil, that is huge. Even a late first. I would take a late first, and then you can rebuild the offensive line. Take a tackle and a guard, or trade up for a wide receiver, or trade Tunsil and then go sign T. Higgins, or go trade for George Pickens. There is so much that Nick Caserio can do this offseason that it is actually bizarre. Like, we've seen Caserio work his magic in the past and just sign a bunch of veteran guys and do what he has to do in order to get this team to the level that it's supposed to be. I mentioned in a previous video, he went out, CJ Stroud, traded up 10 spots, let's go get Will Anderson, back-to-back picks. Like that, I never expected that in 100 years. But the defense is great. The offense is the problem. The two biggest needs to fill is offensive line and wide receiver. And when you have no money to sign anyone, that's a problem. So look for Caserio to make some big moves because there's no reason why you can't just get money. And the cap space is tough, but meaning get money, like you look at the cap, and I'll explain it to everyone, but postseason to June 1st, you have an opportunity to get out of some contracts here. You see the dead money's on the left side in the yellow, all the way on the right over here. But you have your dead cap on the left, and then your cap savings on the right. So Laremy Tunsil, you free up $21 million in cap. You get rid of Titus Howard, that's another $15 million. You get rid of Shaq Mason, that's another $10 million. So if you get rid of all those guys, you will have around $70 million in cap space. And don't forget, there are a lot of good offensive linemen in this free agency. So get rid of the offensive line that you had that was terrible. In Kenyon Green, you can cut him as well. I've shared my piece about Kenyon Green, the left guard we drafted 15th overall, who was out of Texas A&M, who was drafted way too high for what he was supposed to be. Zion Johnson was sitting right there, and you decided to reach on a guard, and he turned out to be not that great. Kenyon Green, I mean, he's still there, but he has been very disappointing. So the offensive line, you got Drew Scruggs, you got Blake Fisher, you got Titus Howard. Keep two of those three, maybe all of them. But you have to trade at least Tunsil, Howard, and then Mason. You cut him because Shaq Mason's an old veteran. You gotta get out of that contract. But if you look at the contracts on this screen right now, there are so many players that are being overpaid, and I don't know why. Dalton Schultz cap hit is $14 million. That is way too much for a tight end. Are you serious? So Caserio's got some moves to make. You had Cade Stover, drafted in the 4th round last year, who played much better than Dalton Schultz. Schultz makes some plays when he has to, but when you look at the Texans offense, $14 million for a tight end, when the tight end really didn't even do much when Nico Collins and the whole wide receiving core was out. So Caserio has some moves to make. First order of business, trade Laremy Tunsil. And it's more of a strategy play. It's more of a future play. And I say this because, yes, he's an all-pro. Yes, he's had a phenomenal career. Get him out of Houston before his slump arrives and before his prime is now over. Because I feel like that was the waning stages of his career where it's like, okay, that's kind of all we got for Tunsil. When you have 19 holding penalties in a season, it's hard for me to believe in you. I'm sorry, it's just how it is. He's a great player. He's a decent teammate. I don't know, decent. He's a good teammate. I don't know why I said decent, but yes. First order of business, Tunsil. Done. And then you can go on to thinking about getting rid of Titus Howard or keeping him because he can play guard and tackle. Then it's Shaq Mason time. Dalton Schultz is $14 million. If you trade him, that's another $11 million. So there's a lot of money to go around. You could even get rid of DeMeco Autry, he was a solid veteran pickup, who's a good nose tackle, but you could go get another guy. So there is so many things Nick Caserio can do with this offense. The offense is the issue. I thought it was going to be the defense because of how stacked the offense is. The offense was talked up like it was this Super Bowl caliber team. So Tunsil is done. But it's just a matter of how do you get more money, because we want to go out and get T. Higgins. If Joe Mixon's going to actually recruit T. Higgins, you got to get money. And Nick Caserio is expecting big fireworks to blow up. So Tunsil, Howard, Shaq Mason, Dalton Schultz. 4 guys that I would say, all right, let's move on. I love Schultz, but you can have a lot more options in terms of how you want to figure it out. So there's my piece. Laremy Tunsil. Get him off. Yes, he's a good tackle. But I'd rather get out of his contract now before he asks for another $25 million a year at the age of 33 or 34, whenever his contract is up. So get him to a team like the Chiefs. If you can get a first-round pick and package those deals to trade up for whether it's a tight end, a wide receiver, a tackle, the fireworks are going to be on offense this year. The defense, Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, Jalen Pitre will be back. Kamari Lassiter, Derek Stingley, Kalen Bullock. There's a lot of talent on the defense. Henry TuOtu, Christian Harris, Azeez Al-Shaair. There's so much to do with the defense. The only player that I would consider moving on from, and I said it, is DeMeco Autry. He's taken up a lot of money, so he's a good nose tackle. I just expected more from him. I know he was injured, but if you can get somebody better, I would consider, hey, if you got to go out and get the money, boom. But there's so much money to go with right here. You got the cap hit speaks for itself, and you have to start with getting rid of Laremy Tunsil because you don't want to have another season like you did where the offensive line was so lackluster. Yes, you want to have it. Getting rid of your blind side tackle sounds very dumb. But when he's a penalty merchant and he's getting to the end of his career stages, end of his prime, which I think just concluded this season, I don't want to see the penalties. I don't want to see the false starts. I don't want to see the holds. I don't want to see any of that. Yes, the 2 sacks, great. But I'd rather a guy who can let up 4 sacks or let up 5 sacks and be at least disciplined enough to know where to put your hands in terms of a position of, all right, let's not hold, let's not move before the ball is snapped. That has been his biggest problem, is moving early. Tunsil has done it so many times. When I'm watching games, he will move twice, back-to-back snaps. That can't, 2-minute drill. That's not, no. So there's a lot to love from Tunsil. There's a lot to not like. And I think for the better, you eat $7.5 million of his contract and you save 20 and you move on from him, because the last thing you want to do is, and he could have a Jason Kelsey career. He could play till he's 35 and be this phenomenal tackle. I'm not doubting that. But I don't want him to be the Travis Kelsey or the DeAndre Hopkins or this potentially Stephon Diggs or the Julio Jones who play, and I know wide receiver and all that is a lot different than tackle. And I can't really have any examples for tackles, but maybe Taylor Lewan. It's the only one I could come up with because he got injured. But You can't wait to pull the trigger, especially when this team is capable of winning a Super Bowl now. This is the Super Bowl run that the Texans need, and they need an offense to do it. If you don't go out and get a wide receiver, if you don't go out and get weapons, you need an offensive line. There's so much to do, and it starts with getting a wide receiver, because I can deal with an underwhelming offensive line if you have T. Higgins, Nico Collins, John Mechie, and Stephon Diggs on a cheap contract. But it all depends on what you can do with the offensive line. Can Blake Fisher develop? Can you get a first-round pick for Laremy Tunsil? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do that? And all of a time span to pull it together before the draft. I trust Nick Caserio, but this is what can potentially blow up for the Texans this offseason, all for the great and potentially winning a Super Bowl. So thank you everyone so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on getting rid of Laremy Tunsil. I am not a big fan just because of getting out of the contract. He's getting paid way too much money, and I'd rather get the value for what he's worth right now rather than wait a year and he's fallen off completely. So again, thank you everyone so much for watching. We got tons of off-season videos on the way, so subscribe to the channel. Be on the lookout. We are going to go crazy with all the news from Texans. So appreciate you. Appreciate everyone watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.